Hey guys, how's it going? Kriparian here. It is card review season in Hearthstone, boys. It's a Witchwood expansion review round 3. There are some exciting cards coming out, and individuals are starting to reveal them, and this is when we're getting a lot of the interesting cards, a lot of the legendary cards, and I got quite a bunch for you guys today. So let's kick it off. The first card in order that was revealed that I didn't review quite yet is Lord Godfrey. The second Warlock legendary has been revealed, and it is a crazy one. 7 mana, 4/4, deal 2 damage to all other minions, and if any die, repeat this battle cry. So it's kind of like a passive 2 spell damage defile, basically. And it's on a minion that does not kill itself. It's all other minions. So you basically get to keep this guy. Yeah, the downside is it costs 7, but you have to remind yourselves, in the past, people have used a 2 mana spell damage minion to combo Defile, and that worked. And that was a 2-card combo, and it cost 4 mana for an effect that was not quite as good as that. And you still get the 4/4. So if you really kind of, do the equal value involved in that, using 2 cards instead of 1 is kind of like, spending another, mana to mana and a half, because you do need that extra card. It's kind of like having a card with a card draw ability. And you get the 4/4 body. So really, you kind of get a 4/4 body for like 1 to 2 mana, and it's all in one on one card. That kind of passes the disadvantage of it, actually costing 7 mana, because the Defile effect is typically more useful earlier in the game. But this is so much more powerful. This is almost guaranteed to clear the board almost no matter what. It's just crazy. This card is insane. Now, the main issue is that Warlock already has so many powerful control tools. Control Warlock is one of the primary decks being played right now. And one of the primary decks being played right now that's not losing very much, in some cases losing nothing at all in the upcoming standard rotation that is accompanying the Witchwood expansion. So I feel that while this card is possibly one of the best cards we've ever seen, it might get not necessarily overshadowed, but it's going to be a crowded space. I don't think the true power level of this card will really be highlighted because Warlock already has so many powerful removal tools. So yes, I think it'll belong in most of the Warlock decks that have these control mechanics for the Q blocks and all that. I think it belongs in almost all of those decks, and it will seem really good. But when Defile cycles out, like next year, when a few of these other cards that have supported Warlock for such a long time cycle out, that's when this card is going to make a gigantic impact, and you will see. We also got Muck Hunter, 5 mana, 5/8 rush, and your opponent gets 2 2/1 minions. Overall, that's pretty weak. It does increase the power level of Fireland's Portal because it's one of the best natural 5-drops with the battle cry not going off, but Fireland's Portal is part of the Karazhan set, so it is cycling out of the standard block, so it won't be that relevant. In Wild, Tempo Mage is pretty good, but there are some really wild things that can happen on the 5 mana cost drop anyway, so that's kind of a wash. The way that I think this card might have some viability has to do with Mind Control Tech, the 3 mana 3/3 that if your opponent has 4 or more minions, you get 1 random 1. Now, the concept I have here comes from the fact that Mind Control Tech has seen play not in every expansion, but roughly every other expansion since Hearthstone has come out, 4 or 5 years ago. So it's been a card that frequently comes back in the meta, and the way that I have to think about it is, if Mind Control Tech is good enough to see play in your deck anyway, would you then play Muck Hunter to have more of a potent MC tech against other control decks? And I think that's possible. I think it is a very interesting card. It's a bit clumsy, but I wouldn't write it off completely. I think there's a small chance, but there's some chance still that it will see constructed play. We got the Red Band Wasp, new warrior card, another rusher, 2 mana 1/3. Really crap stats, but it has the rush and it has a large enrage buff. So if you're killing like a 1/1 minion, you basically get to kill it for free, and you get a 2 mana 4/2 beast. Is that good? It's all right. It's all right. It's basically just all right. I have to think of it kind of like a weapon. Typically, if you remember the old school fiery war axe, you'd kill something that didn't quite have 3 health, and then you would block your opponent's 2-drop or 3-drop following that. That's kind of what this does, but it loses a lot of flexibility because it's awful in the late game. So it's tough to say. It's probably better than it looks, but it looks pretty bad. Then we have Hunting Mastiff. Another rush card for Hunter this time. 2 mana 2/1, and it highlights the Echo mechanic as well. So you can potentially play 5 of these, get 10 damage on board control, spread across 5 bodies. That's pretty good in terms of the flexibility, but it's a very weak card to play in the earlier stages of the game. But flexibility can be very important. It's often an aspect of Hearthstone that is underestimated, and again, it's difficult to write off the card, even though it looks pretty mediocre to me. One other aspect that is pretty important to realize is the Death Knight for Hunters, the Deathstalker Rexar, will have his hero power updated after this expansion, so it will then include cards like the Hunting Mastiff, which might make some of the new beast combinations a lot stronger. And I like that aspect. It makes it so even if this card sees absolutely no play, it might make a pretty relevant impact for hunters who play the Hunter Death Knight card. I have a Druid card, Forest Guide. Now, I feel that this card has been pretty conflicting in terms of people's thoughts on Reddit and whatnot. I have to say, probably on the more optimistic side, that it is not completely horrible. Now, it takes a lot of understanding to see where this card might see some kind of action. It is a 4 mana 1/6, and at the end of your turn, both players draw a card. Now, that is a negative effect for the player. So the way you have to think about it is, if both players are drawing a card, that's kind of even. That's probably better than even, because you'd only include that if it favors you, in your deck at least, right? That's a little bit better than even. But this effect is at the end of your turn. And because it's at the end of the turn, it makes it better for your opponent, because you don't get to play the card that you draw from when you first play this. You get to play it 1 turn later. Your opponent, however, gets to play the card that he gets right away because he gets it right before his turn starts. So this effect is actually quite bad, and you really need a deck that needs this mechanic. It relies on this mechanic. Now, we have seen some Druid cards that require you to have a large number of cards in your hand, and they were mostly aggressive Druid cards. The problem with that is a lot of the aggressive Druid cards play in a way where you just dump them all as fast as possible. So it's very difficult to hold cards in an aggressive Druid deck while still being an aggressive Druid deck. And I think this card, although horrible, bridges that gap reasonably well. I don't think it's enough for the archetype to live, and I think that archetype's going to need a lot more help. But if that deck is going to exist, I think there's actually some chance that the Forest Guide will be included. The Forest Guide is not a milled Druid card. This card is only playable if you have a strong board position on the board, so if you have a lot of more dangerous cards on the board, and if you have a lot of cards that buff all of your minions, like, the Mark, they give all your minions +1/+1. The reason is a 4 mana 1/6 just gets killed by everything. If your opponent has 2 3/2 minions, he just kills it for free. One attack is just not good enough. It doesn't matter how much health a minion has if its attack is 0 or 1, because it just gets killed for free unless you're playing a very aggressive deck, unless you have a lot of buffs, which you can be playing. So it's going to require a lot of fine-tuning and a lot of balance, but I wouldn't quite write this card off despite it looking absolutely terrible. I agree with you, it looks absolutely terrible. And we have a rogue card, Wanted. Deal 3 damage to a minion. If it kills it, you add a coin to your hand. So if it doesn't kill it, it's horrible. It's just 4 mana, deal 3 damage. It's to a minion. So it's worse than, it's worse than a Wrath, it's worse than Dark Bomb, and it costs 4 mana, not 2. 4. So the card at face value is atrocious. But coins are really valuable if you're playing Miracle Rogue. getting an extra coin means not just getting an extra card with Auctioneer, it often means getting like 3 extra cards with Auctioneer. Because rogue players that play the Miracle package, getting a coin means 1 extra card from Auctioneer, means 1 more mana to play another spell that costs 1 mana, and typically when drawing 2 cards, you're somewhat